my wife about it, and I was like half sure I wouldn't be able to come up with like a good background for this character because I'm all out. and it's always such a relief to see that, it still works. Like the idea factory or whatever it is in my brain is still working.
Well, that's what I really enjoyed about A Killer's Mind. Like you said, his methods were very unique. I mean, I read a lot of these crime fictions, and they're good books, but sometimes it's kind of like the same way of doing things. But yours was very different. What your killer was doing, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I was actually pretty proud of it.
So people have to go check out that book and know what we're talking about. Don't want to spoil anything.
This is the book where I actually have like the dedication in the book, and I put it in the acknowledgements as well, where I was sitting with my wife in a restaurant while we were like in our anniversary vacation, and I was like, she was talking about something like rational, and I suddenly said, if people were, then I thought it would be taxidermy. So I said, if people were taxidermied, do you think they'd be flexible afterwards? And she like gave me this stare. And then okay, so we're talking about this now.
It's romantic. Yeah. Well, every writer's browser search history is probably pretty frightening.
Yeah, it's mine is terrible. I'm constantly worried that like someone will knock on the door. Sorry, sir, we're from the government. You're coming with us.
Yeah.
Your days of evil are done.
Yeah, and I think that's good with The Killer's Mind too. So now, like, I'm excited to see your next book, to see what you came up with. So I think that kind of sets the excitement going for your books. Yeah, yeah, and I see that it's going to focus that Zoey's going to be dealing with 2 serial killers in the next book. So
yeah, that's right. She'll have basically it will. Okay. Again, we're stepping into spoiler territory, so I'll avoid it. But yeah, she'll have like there will be a tiptoe between 2 serial killers, and it gets dicey.
And you said you're already working on the 3rd one that'll come out next year?
Yeah, I'm actually like 10,000 words. Like next week I'll reach the final showdown, and then I'll start fixing the draft. So I'm pretty advanced in my first draft.
And so what's the big difference between doing it yourself and your self-publishing and now with Thomas and Mercer? So they're like, do they give you like deadlines that you have to keep then?
Well, they're actually pretty awesome. Like we agree on the deadlines together. So obviously they have a process. So if they're set to publish a book at a certain date, they'll need it at a certain date. But we define this date beforehand. So actually I'm the one determining the initial deadline, which is pretty similar to self-publishing, because when I self-published, I made myself finish a book by a certain deadline, because otherwise there would be no paycheck. So it's pretty much the same. Actually, the pace when working with a traditional publisher in general is a lot less hectic than self-publishers. Self-publishers usually need to publish more books to be able to make a living.
Yes, especially nowadays.
Yes, it's a really hectic. So yeah, we agree on a certain date, and then I aim to meet that date. So far, so good.
And do you set like goals for yourself, like 1,000 words a day, or?
Well, it used to be really rigid. 3,000 words per day, like that was my goal. These days, I'm trying to be a bit more lenient towards my goals, because I started feeling a bit of burnout. Like I started feeling that writing was becoming much harder for me. So I said, okay, settle down. So my goals now are monthly, not daily, and they're quite reasonable. So right now I'm doing 25,000 words per month, which for me is like really taking it easy, relatively speaking, and not working incredible. Like otherwise it'd be like killing myself to finish each book, and I'll just it would end up with me just writing bad stuff. So I wanted to give myself the time to write better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's so I have goals, but I'm trying to be more flexible and lenient towards myself.
And do you usually write in the same place? Like you have a place in your home, or you go to a coffee shop?
Yeah. No. I have I have an office at home, and I write on it's not a laptop, it's like a desktop computer, so I always write in the same location, I have like this ergonomic keyboard, because otherwise I get these infection, not infections, what's the word?
Oh yeah, the carpal tunnel pain, yeah.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, or in the elbow.
The wrist, and yeah.
Yeah, so I have this ergonomic keyboard, which is really great. And just my office, it has a door, so I can close it if the kids get too loud.
Yeah. What software do you use? Like Word or?
I use Scrivener.
Oh yeah, I love Scrivener.
It's just amazing. Like, it was an eye opener when I started writing. I used to write on Office on Word, and it's not a bad software for writing, but I used to be a programmer. So the whole concept of a book being a series of objects, like the chapters, the scenes, it connected with me so well. And I was like, this is perfect. This is what I always needed.
You're like Neo, you're looking at things in code in the Matrix.
I sometimes feel like this is what programming, in a way, it taught me to write better, because programming is all about taking a problem, splitting it into smaller problems, and splitting them into even smaller problems until you reach a problem which is really simple, which is like something you can write a 10-line function to solve. So in a way, writing is the same. You have like this plot essence, profiler, chases, killer, like serial killer, and then you can start breaking it up. Okay, so I want, there will be 3 sections of the book. The first, the introduction, and then the main chase, and then the final showdown, and then break those apart. So it's a lot like programming in the end. By the end, you reach the scene, which is the smallest part, and then you can just write that, and you don't have to think about the entire story when you write the scene.
Oh yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, like little blocks of things that need to be put in for the whole thing.
And Scrivener really works well with that type of writing, because I have those tiny blocks and I can shift them around later, and it's really nice.
Yeah, I love that drag and drop. Like, oh no, this scene goes up here, not down there, and
yeah.
Yeah. Are you gonna go back to writing the Glenmore Park series, or are you focusing on Zoey right now?
I don't know. I like the Glenmore Park. I kind of always feel like I want to write it again, but I literally have no idea. Mm-hmm. Whenever people ask me that sometimes, and I actually have no idea. I actually tried to write Glenmore Park for a while back, and I didn't manage it. I have a 15K book start somewhere, and it just didn't work, and I stopped. So I'm not sure if I'll go back to Glenmore Park. The characters might make guest appearances in other books. That's one of the options. So we'll see. Oh
yeah, I didn't realize that Zoey Bentley was started as a character in your other series. So that's kind of cool that they cross over.
Yeah. Her boss, the chief, Christine Mancuso, is she's an FBI agent in the Glenmore Park mystery books, and she's promoted to being the chief in the BAU after the 3rd book, in which she plays a major.
Oh, okay, well, that's cool. I didn't realize that. Yeah. Okay, and so and then we have aspiring writers that listen to this podcast. Do you have any advice for them? They're struggling with their first draft.
My advice is, it's like the most cliche advice that most writers give, which is keep writing and keep reading and don't give up. sometimes people think that my success was an overnight thing. I published my first book at the age of 16, and I published The Killer's Mind when I was 38. So it wasn't exactly an overnight thing. And I got a lot of rejections in the way and some more flops. And I had to get a lot of experience under my belt to make it work. So for those of you who really, really want to do it, you have to know that you don't need to give up. Specifically, this is actual specific things you can do is follow Don Winslow on Twitter. He just has these awesome examples of how he started out and where he is now, which is really encouraging. And I love reading Chuck Wendig's blog.
Oh yeah.
It's just perfect mindset for writers as far as I'm concerned. I never find myself disagreeing with him. So, and he's really funny as well. So,
yeah.
So that's an actual, useful advice I can give. And I do give it to writers who ask me what should they do. I tell them, well, are you reading Chuck Wendig's blog?
Yeah, that's great. I'll have to go check out Don Winslow's Twitter feed. But yeah, I like Chuck's blog. That's a lot of good advice on there.
Yeah.
and like you said, funny. Oh, okay. All right. Well, thanks, Michael. I want to thank you for being on the podcast and taking time to talk to us. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening to the Meet the Thriller Author podcast. Be sure to visit thrillerauthors.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover great thrilling reads. If you enjoy the podcast, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review to it, wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast, be it